Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to what is a very full house at City Hall, and thank you very much for being here. My name is Elizabeth Glidden, and I am the chair of this committee, which is the Committee of the Whole. This is a specially called meeting of the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of a public hearing regarding a proposed sick leave ordinance, municipal sick leave ordinance for the city of Minneapolis. I'm joined today by Council Members Gordon, Cano, Reich, Bender, Council President Johnson, Council Member Andrew Johnson, Yang, Goodman, and Fry, and we are a quorum of this committee. I just have a couple of announcements as we begin. I know that people want to be in here with us, and just I want you to know that room 319, which is across the hall, is open so that you can sit down when you want to. That room does have a live stream in there of the meeting. That is also where we have interpreters that can assist for this meeting, either for helping you understand what is being said or for the purpose of coming and assisting with public testimony if you desire. We are asking every speaker to sign up, and sign-up sheets are out front. And I believe that those are the primary announcements that I have been told to give. We are going to begin this meeting with a very brief, about 3-minute presentation of what we are talking about today. So I'd invite Susan Trammell to come up right now to the lectern and give us that overview. All materials are posted on our online agenda for this meeting, plus there have been a number of copies of the materials that have been out in the hall. Ms. Trammell.
Good afternoon, Chair Glidden and members of the committee. I am Susan Trammell, and I'm going to just give you a brief overview of the ordinance that the public hearing is being held for today. Just as background as to the process that occurred, the Workplace Partnership Group was created in the fall of 2015. And through that work group, extensive engagement with 14 listening sessions and over 500 individuals either attending or giving written comments were received by the work group. And based on all the information that the work group received, they presented recommendations to the City Council on March 16th of 2016. And from that presentation on March 16th, we subsequently drafted a proposed ordinance for which this public hearing is happening. The scope of the proposed ordinance is that it would include all employers with 6 or more employees working in the geographic boundaries of the city. It would exclude the U.S. government, Minnesota state departments and agencies, and other county or local governments who have employees working within the city of Minneapolis. The employees must work 80 hours in a year in order to be covered by this ordinance. It would include all employees, whether they work full-time, part-time, temporary, or seasonal, as long as they've met the 80 hours. It would exclude independent contractors, who by definition are not employees. It would exclude construction workers who are paid prevailing wage for all hours worked, and construction worker apprentices. It also would exclude health care providers who are casual employees. Employees would accrue 1 hour of paid safe and sick time for every 30 hours that they work for the employer. They could carry over, as the ordinance is currently drafted, 80 hours to the next year. The maximum accrual is 48 hours in a calendar year. They would accrue immediately upon employment, but they could not use it until they have been employed 90 calendar days with that employer. They could use this paid safe and sick time for themselves or many of their relatives, and it's listed here on the screen as to who is a family member. They may also use this paid safe and sick time for physical illness, injury, or health condition, for medical diagnosis, care, or treatment, and then preventative care as well for them or their family members. And then there's a provision in there related to an absence due to, domestic assault, sexual assault, or stalking. And it would allow for many different situations that would be covered under those terms. And, the last provision under which they can use the paid safe or sick time is if either their business or the school of a family member closed and they needed to provide child care, and that closure was due to a public health emergency. There are certain notice and record-keeping requirements contained within this ordinance. The employer must post notices about the availability of and the accrual of safe and sick time, and inform the employees of their rights under this ordinance. That notice must be given to the employee upon hire and be posted in languages that are spoken by at least 5% of the employees at that workplace. And if they have an employee handbook, it must be included in the employee handbook. It requires that the employers track the hours of employees who work occasionally in the city. So if an employee works in, say, St. Paul and in Minneapolis, the hours worked in Minneapolis must be tracked, and they accrue 1 hour for every 30-hour worked within the city of Minneapolis. They must maintain the records for 3 years, and there's an obligation on the part of the employer to keep the information that they receive regarding the health situation of the employee, any medical information, or any information related to a domestic abuse or sexual assault matter. Keep that confidential. Now, if an employer has an existing paid time off policy or equivalent leave policy, then that's deemed to be in compliance with the ordinance. Although the ordinance encourages more generous policies and allows for the donation of leave and the exchange of hours if the employees wish to do that. It also allows employers who wish to advance paid accrued safe and sick time to do so without penalty. Now, the proposed ordinance before you has included within it an enforcement timeline, an implementation timeline. The Department of Civil Rights by this ordinance is given the authority to implement, administer, and enforce the ordinance. During the next, the actual active date would be July 1st of 2017, and from now until then, the department would need to use that time to create the rules and that would actually administer and enforce this ordinance. They would also have authority to investigate possible violations and to order appropriate relief for the violations. So from now until the end of June of 2017, the department would need to conduct stakeholder outreach and community engagement. That outreach needs to be both multilingual and culturally appropriate, and also when they create these guidelines and frequently asked questions, they need to include all of those considerations as well. The ordinance also directs the department to explore work-sharing agreements with the state of Minnesota, and as I said before, adopt the rules and create the notices in multiple languages for employer use. Those things would need to be done prior to the effective date, and then once the ordinance becomes effective, then upon a first violation by an employer, the department is required to only impose remedial actions, no penalties. Once the ordinance has been into effect a year, then the penalties that are included in the ordinance would begin to take effect. I thank you for your attention, and I can stand for questions if you have any.
So I think we're going to move immediately to the public hearing. Thank you very much, Ms. Trammell. You can go ahead maybe also I guess in the media room they can turn off the presentation. We are, just a couple of reminders. We are going to have a time clock here just to help you keep track of your time. We are asking speakers to speak for no more than 2 minutes, though you certainly do not need to use your full amount of time, so what you need within that. I am going to ask, because we are such a full room, if at least 3 speakers could physically come and line up, because I think we want to make sure we let as many people speak as possible, as expeditiously as possible, so that is my request, and we may want to ask the clerk to kind of help with that. You should have a number, and I will call people in order that they have signed up. So number 1 speaker is Madeline Gardner, speaker number 2, Kava Zabawa, and speaker number 3, Tyrone Spencer. I would appreciate if you would come and line up. And speaker number 4 is Guillermo Lindsay. So if people could get ready, I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate people being here, knowing this is such a full room, and your patience and cooperation. Ma'am.
Okay. Hi, my name's Madeline Gardner. I'm a registered nurse at Fairview Riverside, and nurses support sick time for everyone as a public health policy that really makes sense to keep everybody well. I want to speak specifically to the necessity of including casual nurses in getting sick time. So every year at the hospital, the administration puts up signs at every entrance that says, if you're sick, don't come to the hospital. Don't visit anyone, don't come in. Because the vulnerable people at the hospital are at risk of getting secondary infections, small babies, elderly, people with immune suppression. Now, casual nurses make up a small but important amount of the nursing workforce. And as nurses, we care very much about protecting our patients. We don't want to expose them to anything. So we need the support to stay home when we're sick and not expose our patients to illness. Just like anyone else, casual nurses get sick. And just like anyone else, casual nurses depend on the income that they get from their jobs. So who's a casual nurse? I will be a casual nurse this summer. My husband will be working full-time in healthcare, and I'm going to move to casual to have flexibility in my schedule, but we're still going to rely on my hours, and I'm going to need that sick time when I get sick, because I don't want to expose young babies to being sick. So I would ask each of you city council members to think, if you've had a child or if your grandma was in the hospital, how would you feel if the nurse who was taking care of them was sick? We want that nurse to stay home, so we should give her the support to do that. Likewise, on my unit, the other nurses who work casual, some of whom work a lot of hours, as many or more as many of the scheduled employees. Many of them are moms who take care of their kids, and they need the flexibility, but they still need that income. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Speaker 2, and then 3 is Tyrone Spencer, 4 is Guillermo Lindsay, 5 is Rupak Riser.
Thank you very much for having us. My name is Charlotte Sabol, and I'm a registered nurse of over 35 years and a member of the Minnesota Nurses Association. I worked as a casual RN at 2 Minneapolis hospitals for over 10 years as a casual nurse and over 25 years as a nurse. When my kids were young, I took a casual status RN position when no part-time or full-time positions were available. At first, I was apprehensive that there wouldn't be enough shifts as a casual for me to contribute to the support of my family. I soon found there were plenty of shifts available, as the hospital really relies on flexible casuals to fully staff the hospital on any given shift. At times, I was picking up as many as 32 hours a week, or at a 0.8 schedule as a casual RN. However, unlike another RN who is scheduled 0.8 at the same hospital as casuals, we don't earn benefits such as earned sick time, health care insurance, or vacation time. When we pick up shifts in our schedule, there's a lot of pressure to come to work, sick or not, as we are filling staffing holes in the schedule. And also we suffer the loss of income when we are sick and aren't able to come to work for those shifts that we have been scheduled for weeks ahead. This exclusion of casual healthcare providers assumes casual employees don't rely on these jobs for income to support their families. I do. This exclusion assumes that casual healthcare providers don't get sick and come to work. I did. This exclusion assumes that casual healthcare providers don't need pay sick and save time just like all workers in order to keep our communities safe, as we all do. We strongly urge you to amend this ordinance to include all casual healthcare workers just like all workers are covered under this ordinance, whether half-time, full-time, or casual status. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Speaker 3, and then 4 is Guillermo Lindsay, 5 is Rupak Riser, 6 is Don Moshkow.
Hi, my name is Tyrone Spencer, and my story is I was working at Arby's one day. I worked there for 3 years, and I have a medical situation where I have bowel obstructions, and I have one at work. And due to that, I went to my manager and spoke to him about my situation, that I couldn't work today, that I had to check myself into the hospital. He wasn't trying to hear it, so he told me to do what I have to do. So I ended up leaving, checked myself into the hospital, and I came back. He was doing everything he can do to get back at me. Like, I went from being a shift manager to full-time. He started cutting my hours, went from part-time. And due to that, I was late on rent, lost my job, lost my car. And that's just my situation of working at, being at work and getting sick. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Speaker 4, if Speaker 4 is here, Guillermo Lindsay.
And Guillermo Lindsay could not make it at this early time, so we switched numbers.
Okay.
Okay. My name is John Richard. I live in South Minneapolis. I'm the Employment and Training Manager at Pillsbury United Communities. I want to speak to this from our experience as running a jobs and training program.
Thank you.
We primarily work with people, low-level workers, people who've had long-term associations from the workplace, people with multiple barriers for employment. I cannot tell you how many times we've helped somebody, and people worked really hard to get back into the workforce. They get the job. They're proud of themselves. Things are picking up. 6 months later, we hear back from them. Unexpected illness, a child gets sick, they had to miss 3-4 days of work, they're back at the job search program. And the reality of it is, the more you do quick switches from job to job to job like that, every time you're back seeking work, it becomes more and more difficult. People look at your job record and say, well, this person's not reliable. This person was sick. This person had a sick child, like I'm guessing everybody on this council has experienced when you needed to call in sick from work. I just want to say very briefly that if we are serious about looking at employment and training as a path out of poverty, there has to be a provision for sick time for all workers.
Speaker number 5, Rupak Riser. Speaker 6 is Don Moshkow. Speaker 7, please, Mary Schwartz. And Speaker 8, Kate Cummings. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Rupak Riser, and I live in South Minneapolis in Ward 13. My mom is a single parent.
And it will pick you up.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Trust the magic of the speakers. They will do it.
Okay. My mom is a single parent and retired school teacher, and she adopted me and my sister from India in the 80s. When my sister was about 12 years old, it was apparent that she would have some severe mental health issues. And so what that meant is that my mom would take my sister to school. Sometimes she would get scared and would just have to go home. And because of my mom's school's generous sick leave policy, she was able to be there for my sister and take her home in her time of need. Because of my mom's school's generous leave policy, it wasn't a financial hardship for us. It shouldn't take being in a professional job to be able to take care of your family. I'm not a parent, but I know that kids can be unpredictable, illness included. So I urge you to pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 6. And speaker number 7 is Mary Schwartz.
Hi, City Council members. My name is Don Mosco. I work in Human Resources for Fairview Health Services. I'm here today representing 3 Twin City healthcare organizations, Fairview Health Services, Children's Hospital and Clinics of Minnesota, and Allina Health. All of our healthcare systems are largely and highly complex organizations that deliver 24-hour a day, 365 days a year. We take our role in caring for our patients and our employees very seriously. We also need flexibility to provide care when and where it is needed. We continue to remain concerned about how the ordinance impacts our casual employees. We appreciate that the council has recognized the casual staff who work in the healthcare field, and need to be exempt from this ordinance. However, as drafted, the language is very narrow in scope and does not match Minnesota's statutory definitions for healthcare providers and does not address the complexity of our healthcare workforce. They can be nurses, paramedics, physical therapists, transport aides, and nursing assistants. Casual employees choose to work on a casual basis because it allows them the freedom and flexibility to work when and where they choose. For many employees, working on a casual basis is considered a benefit, and one of the features they seek when applying and remaining with a healthcare organization. One of the ways we ensure sick employees don't come to work is by offering those shifts to casual employees. Those are employees who have voluntarily chosen to work on a casual basis. This means they are inherently working only when we have a business need and they have desire to work that shift. Specifically, we ask you to take a careful look at the administration and regulation of this ordinance and rework as necessary so as to not create administrative burden, additional tracking, and record keeping, especially for employees who travel among more than one site. Our current systems do not track based on geographic locations. We'd like assurance that our existing PTO sick time programs comply. We look forward to working with you and your staff to address these issues in the near future. And once again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have speaker 7, then 8, Kate Cummings, 9, Dan Swenson-Klatt, 10, Joe Woods.
Okay. My name is Mary Schwartz, and I'm Vice President of Human Resources for Ebenezer. We provide health and housing services, including skilled nursing care, assisted living, and independent senior housing. We provide this care not only to seniors throughout the metro area, but also those living in outstate locations such as Lake City, Red Wing, and Baxter, Minnesota. Our 2,200 employees, out of our 2,200 employees, we have about 300 of them working in Minneapolis. And of that number, about 200 of them work in one of our healthcare settings that provides 24/7 care and services. In those settings in particular, we are never closed, so that anything that presents the potential to disrupt our staffing is concerning to us. I have to say I support the essence of the ordinance. I think employers should provide sick time to employees, and we provide a very generous paid time accrual program to anyone who has regularly scheduled hours, and that can be a very, very minimal amount of hours. But as it relates to the ordinance, we are concerned about how we would manage the administration of this to on-call employees. I'm not clear why we would pay sick time for employees who aren't required to accept a shift to begin with. If an on-call employee is sick, they simply don't accept that particular shift. We move on and go down the list and offer the shift to the next on-call employee. And I should say that we have ample openings and opportunities for people to pick up as much as they want. If one particular shift doesn't work, they can always call in, or we'll be calling them again within the next few days probably. One last thing is that we provide housing and services not only in Minneapolis, but across Minnesota. So this makes me concerned that this ordinance could force us to treat people differently based on where they work. And this would be against our philosophy of providing consistent benefits to our employees across the organization. So
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Next, speaker number 8.
Kate Cummings. Hello, good afternoon. Hello, Madam President and the City Council members. I'm Kate Cummings. I'm also a nurse. I'm the director of our hospice and palliative care program at Fairview. We'd like to just state and let you know an important perspective on this topic, and that's the mobile nature of our workforce. At any given time, our over 700 employees who care for over 2,300 patients in 14 counties are across our area in counties in Minneapolis and so on. At any hour, at any day of the week, we go from Stillwater to St. Cloud, Minneapolis to Elko, and our staff are ready, their cars, their office, to provide services as nurse, physical therapist, music, massage, physical, occupational, and also our hospice and home care aides. The flexibility of hours and location and variety of job roles is what is important for people coming and working with us as an attractive employer. In fact, many of our employees do choose to work as casual, which allows them to actually sign up for multiple hospitals and other home care agencies to give them the choice of where and when and how long they'd like to work. For us, the concern is how would we track all these multiple employees that work in so many other cities and counties in our area, plus have the opportunity to have different coverage for their care in Minneapolis, but maybe not in another part of the city, the state. We can't underscore that we support getting healthcare coverage, but looking at this as being a particular challenge for us. At any given day and time, our staff can go from Bloomington, Richfield to Minneapolis for visits that occur. Our primary focus is on delivering the highest quality, most comprehensive, and patient-centered care. In this ordinance, in this area, seems to overcomplicate and would really like to look at how best this could be managed. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Speaker 9, Dan Swenson-Klatt. Speaker 10, Joe Woods. Speaker 11, Dave Hancock. And Speaker 12, Dave Amundson.
Chairperson Glidden, council members, thank you for offering us the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Daniel Swenson-Klatt. I'm a resident of Southwest Minneapolis, and for the past 10 years have owned and operated Butter Bakery Cafe in Southwest Minneapolis. I speak in favor of this proposal. I speak for many small business owners in Minneapolis who share with you that we value our employees, we succeed when our communities thrive, and when all are welcome and when opportunity is shared. I believe small businesses can and should lead Minneapolis in its goal to remove racial inequities, help it become one Minneapolis. I'm committed to treat all of my workers fairly, to pay a living wage, and to support them to meet their needs. And yet, I didn't have the technical knowledge or support to offer paid time off to any employees beyond one full-time baker. Nearly a year ago, I chose to implement the original Earned Sick and Safe Time proposal in my own business for all of my 21 employees. If I was going to encourage others to accept it, I had to live the change myself. I knew I could do better. It was an investment, and it paid off. The adoption of the proposal has not been burdensome or onerous or costly. Instead, it has provided my staff with a sense of security and an investment in my business. It has reduced costly staff turnover and the associated costs of retraining. We are a growing business because of this, and while it has added about 1% to my payroll costs, it has produced a return far beyond that. This proposal is good for business. Not caring for employees is anti-business. Not protecting customers from sick employees is anti-business. Not removing the inequities that create a have and have-not society is anti-business. Not sharing the true cost of labor across all of our economy is anti-business. Earned sick and safe time is not anti-business. I urge you to support this proposal.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to ask a favor of folks. I know that there may be ways that you want to show support or other things, and if maybe you wouldn't mind doing something like this, I know but I'm asking you please, just so that we're able to make sure every speaker can get through and their speeches. Speaker number 10.
Hi, my name is Joe Woods. I live at 929 Cortland in downtown Minneapolis. I've lived there for 12 years. I own a business in Jacob Fry's ward, and I am all for paid sick time, for paid benefits, and paid vacation. I provide all of that to my management employees. I could not be against this proposal the way it stands any stronger. It's terrible. There's so many holes in it. Whenever I look at a proposal like this, I follow the money. And who is going to pay for this? I'll tell you who's going to pay for it. My customers will pay for this in higher prices. Currently, in Minneapolis, right now, my customers pay the highest sales tax on liquor in the country. No other place do they pay higher. My customers currently pay the number 4 highest liquor sales tax in the country. There's only 3 other places that are higher. In addition to that, there's only 3 states in the country that do not have a tip credit. My customers are also paying for that. My employees are some of the highest paid servers and bartenders in the country. So all of those things my customers are already paying for, and now this city council is asking them to pay for paid sick time as well. I know that there's ordinances around the country that have this, or cities that have this same similar type ordinances. Businesses are moving out of those cities. Jamba Juice has left San Francisco. Toyota is leaving San Francisco because of laws like this. The very people that this is designed to help, it will hurt the most because there will be less jobs, less tax base. Businesses are not going to move here and relocate here because this is not a business-friendly thing. This drives costs up. The record-keeping nightmare for small businesses will be an absolute nightmare.
Sir, if you could just finish.
Other people have
Yep,
went over.
and I'm going to give you that flexibility too, but it does have a limit, so that's why I want to give you a heads up.
I may have to dial back my vacation and benefits. The mayor's hanging you guys are hanging your hats on this study that the Minnesota Department of Health did. This study does not point to one case, not one case of someone getting sick in that study. I've called this Department of Health. They've been going to call me back, and they don't return any of my calls. With regard to the hospitality
And I am
industry,
going to ask you now to please.
I have one last point.
Yes, thank you, sir.
One last point.
All right, everybody else
In the
just.
hospitality industry, my servers work for tips. The majority of the bartenders and servers work for tips. They will still come in sick because the lion's share of their pay is through tips, not through the 3, 4, 5 hours of minimum wage pay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Speaker 10, Dave Hancock. 11, Dave Hancock. 12, Dave Amundson. 13 is Mike Noble.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is David Hancock. I'm employed by ACRA, a large home health care provider providing services to people with disabilities and older adults across the state of Minnesota. We currently serve about 4,800 individuals with disabilities and older adults, and we employ over 5,000 employees. We're also a member of the Minnesota Home Care Association, and I'm here on their behalf today as well. I want to start by saying that ACRA and the Minnesota Home Care Association are in support of providing whatever level of benefits that we can to our hourly employees. So we are not opposed to this proposed ordinance. A couple of caveats and a request for guidance is what I've come here for today. The caveat is that home care providers are often reimbursed by insurance companies and government programs at a very fixed rate. So anytime there's an increase for benefit costs like this, we cannot pass that along to a customer. We don't have a product or a menu item that we can up the price on. So that's one caveat. The guidance that I seek is this. In the summer of 2015, the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, and the state of Minnesota reached and enacted a collective bargaining agreement covering most direct service employees or personal care attendants in the state of Minnesota. Provider agencies like those that belong to the Minnesota Home Care Association were not considered the employer for the process of this CBA. It was the state of Minnesota. So my questions are these. Does this proposed ordinance include the personal care assistants that were covered in this collective bargaining agreement, or are they considered employees of the state of Minnesota as in that collective bargaining agreement? PCA agencies often receive an increase in the reimbursement to cover the sick leave mandate of that collective bargaining agreement. So my question is, does the city of Minneapolis intend to seek an increase in those reimbursement rates? And my final point is that the PCAs under the collective bargaining agreement that we now live earn a PTO at 1 hour for every 52 hours worked, and they have to work 600 hours before they can begin to use those hours. That's in conflict with the ordinance that's before you today. We're not opposed to that. We're just seeking additional guidance, if you would, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker 12. Speaker 13 is Mike Noble. If you could please get ready. Speaker 14 is Scott Riddle. Speaker 15 is Heather Farr.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Amundsen. My company is Trehus Builders. We're at 3017 4th Avenue South in Minneapolis. It's our 34th year in business. We have 21 people that work at Trehus, architects and carpenters and a few others. So I am opposed to this, and I'm opposed, one, just on principle. I just don't think this is a good idea for cities to begin micromanaging businesses in this way. We already have layers of regulations from the federal government, state government, and the more regulations that we have to record and document, it's very difficult to keep up with that. We have all we can handle to keep our clients happy. We have to do everything right for everybody all the time. It's a lot of work. It's intense every single day. Many of my competitors don't have employees. They call all of their workers subcontractors. Yeah, I have unlimited time here. I don't know if you noticed that. So I bet it's a minute or so. So my concern is many of my competitors don't. They call everybody a subcontractor. They don't have to pay payroll. They don't have to pay health insurance. They don't have to do sick. They do nothing. On the other side of that coin, the main complaint I hear from my clients is, you're too expensive. Okay. Well, I can't compete with them when they are not doing those things. My suspicion is with laws like this and others coming, I'm sure, I will become more expensive and they will not. Therefore, I have fewer opportunities for work, and the fewer opportunities I have for work, the fewer opportunities I can give to people to be employed. And that's just the way the world works. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mike Noble. And you can come up a little closer just so others behind you have room. Next, we have Scott Riddle, then Heather Farr, and then Speaker 16, Holly Hartford.
My name's Mike Noble. I'm with the Normandy Inn here in Minneapolis at 405 South 8th Street. And thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, council members, for hearing me today. My comments are brief, but during the course of the development of this proposed ordinance, I've been involved. I've listened and learned a fair amount about it. And to some extent, I've been shocked by the scope of it. And the main point I want to make, or the main concern I have, is just that instead of making a sweeping change in our city and how we operate, that we take small incremental steps, kind of take it out for a test drive and see how it works. When I initially did the calculation for my business, I thought, okay, 48 hours of accrued sick time per employee at about $17 an hour. Well, that's about $76,000 a year for me, or for the Normandy Inn. And capitalized at 8%, that means that this sick time contribution has a value to my business of $950,000. Or if I had to just take a hit for that, for the sick time, it would decrease the value of my business $950,000. And so then I think, okay, well, that means the value of my real estate is lower by $950,000. Okay, well, that means the value of everybody's real estate is lower, and gee, that really erodes the tax base of the city. So, and I don't want to sound complaining because I think that there's great validity to all of the comments that have been made about the need for sick time, but I'm just wanted to present the numbers. But furthermore, I now understand that that PTO will be considered qualified as sick and safe leave. But in my particular situation, and I think in many other situations that people have, their collective bargaining agreements they don't define PTO, they define vacation pay, they define personal day, they define...
and if you could wrap up your...
I will. They define diversity day. And so I please ask you that when you do construct this proposed ordinance further, that you specifically include all these other things that are intended to be paid time off for people, because we do offer 17 to 22 paid days a year, and we just want to make sure that when you say PTO that you kind of define all the things that are inclusive in that.
Thank you, Mr. Noble. Thank you. Speaker 14.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Scott Riddle, and I'm the president and CEO of Walker Methodist. And we're a nonprofit senior living company, and we have about 1,100 employees, half of which are in the city of Minneapolis. And we provide paid time off to all of our full-time and our part-time employees. But I want to come to you today and have a little bit of concern about how this ordinance relates to the casual healthcare worker and how you would define that. We appreciate the attempt to exempt the casual healthcare worker from the proposal, but the language does fall short. And I'm requesting that you take a look at that. The senior care sector is not like most businesses. We are charged with taking care of some of the most frail and quite frankly, very vulnerable population of our society. And we take that very seriously. That, in turn, requires us to follow quite a few regulations at the state and federal level, which affects our staffing every single day. At any one time, that's how we use casual employees, to fill in those shifts so that our full-time and part-time scheduled employees can stay home when they're sick. On any one particular time, we could have many, many open positions. As a matter of fact, we have 40 open positions right now at our health center on Bryant Avenue, and we have a job fair tomorrow for anyone who is interested for those positions. But the important thing here is this ordinance, we worry about the requirement that they be licensed, because we have a lot of people who are unlicensed, certified nursing assistants. The requirement to pay 4 times the federal minimum wage in our industry has a cap on Medicaid and Medicare. The model doesn't work to pay that much for these workers. We'd love to do it, but we just simply can't. So I'd ask you to re-examine that portion of the ordinance. As I said, we do offer paid time off for all of our full-time and part-time employees, and we'd like our casual workers to become regular scheduled workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 15, and then we have Speaker 16. 17 is James Calkins. 18 is Dan McElroy.
Good afternoon. I'm Heather Farr, and I live in downtown Minneapolis proper, and I work outside of the city but serve the Minneapolis community, and I own an employment service. I'm putting people back to work. And I work along with my peers involved in the Minnesota Recruiting and Staffing Association, and we represent over $1 billion of business in the state of Minnesota, so it is the state also serving the Minneapolis community. I just want to be an advocate for employees, and that's what I'm passionate about doing, is being that bridge and being that gap and getting people back to work. And I'm not against taking care of employees. That's why in our business, every 42.5 hours that are worked and accrued, an hour is given of time off as well to our employees. And that's not after 90 days, that's immediate. And I just wanted to create some awareness to businesses and small businesses out there in the staffing industry in general. We're looking to take care of employees too, and we're looking to continue to provide that resource. But as others have said, that cost needs to come from somewhere. And so I'm asking you to consider employment services and those of us that are creating that bridge and gap in employment, and think about how that impacts us. Logistically speaking, I can't even wrap my head around how I'm going to work with other staffing services. There's, hundreds of staffing services and competitors here locally. It's a very healthy market, which is great for business, but it's also not great for tracking those hours as the current proposal is written. So I'm all for employees. I'm all for taking care of them. We all are. We just want to make sure that this is something that can be done accurately and correctly. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Speaker 16, 17. Yes, thank you.
My name is Holly Hatch-Sarisuk. I am the co-owner with my husband of Sunny Ice and Lek. It's a Thai restaurant in Northeast Minneapolis. We've been there about 8 years. Our business employs 27 individuals in one location. 62% of our employees are immigrants who are non-native speakers of English, including my husband, although he sounds like a native speaker. I am in favor of progressive causes of social justice, of access and equity. I am in favor of citizens and employees having access to the supports they need to live healthy lives, including paid sick and safe time. However, I'm not here to speak in favor of the Safe and Sick Ordinance, not as it is currently written. While some would argue that those who support the idea in principle should stay out of the weeds and not dig into too many details, I believe it is in the details that the true impact of a broad-reaching public policy is illuminated. While there are several sections of the policy about which I am concerned, I will focus on just one of them due to the short time. The Safe and Sick policy, as currently written, provides up to a 37.5% greater benefit to part-time than full-time employees. This policy would require restaurant employers to allocate their limited wage resources from slim margins disproportionately to part-time restaurant staff. In the restaurant industry, kitchen staff are typically full-time employees, and service staff are more often part-time. Kitchen staff are more often ethnic, cultural, and linguistic minorities. They more often have educational, skills-based, or immigrant status challenges to seeking higher wage jobs. Yet, given the current structure of the Safe and Sick policy, restaurants will be required to distribute proportionately less of their wage resources to these staff than to the part-time, tipped staff who are the higher wage earners. Thus, the maximum number, I believe the maximum number of annually accruable hours should be indexed according to the employee's average work week. It is unjust to fail on this front. Others may argue that servers won't use the time allotted them, but will trade shifts instead, so that restaurants won't actually use their money to pay those employees. Even if this is true, it does not justify setting into law an unjust policy. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 17, James Calkins. Thank you.
Chair Glidden and council members. My name is Jim Calkins, and I'm here today on behalf of the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association, which represents more than 2,000 members in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area and across the state. Policies like the Sick and Safe Time Ordinance being discussed today would have significant consequences for many of our members, which include growers, garden center operators, landscape designers and contractors, landscape irrigation and lighting providers, lawn, tree, and landscape service providers, and a multitude of allied industry partners and suppliers. It is an industry that values its employees and an industry that I have spent my entire working life in, and an industry that I'm proud of. The MNLA believes that employee benefits packages, including sick leave benefits, can be advantageous to both employers and employees, and supports these types of benefits from a voluntary, best practice perspective when employers are able to provide them. Many of our member firms already offer benefit packages that variously include sick leave or paid time off, while others are hopeful that they will eventually have the financial resources to offer these types of benefits in order to attract and retain good employees. Every business is, however, unique, and these are complex business decisions that are best left to individual employers and their employees to work out. They are not something that should be mandated by governments as a one-size-fits-all policy, which are rarely prudent and often have unintended consequences. Public health and safety is the primary justification for the proposed Minneapolis Sick and Safe Time Ordinance, and variously and repeatedly this is stated in the draft ordinance itself. This is a laudable goal, but there is little scientific evidence that this outcome would be achieved. Ultimately, it's small business and medium-sized businesses that would be most affected by the proposed ordinance, and these impacts have essentially been ignored or minimized during the city's process. Once again, the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association supports these types of benefits on a voluntary basis when employers are able to provide them, but does not support the mandated sick and safe time ordinance that has been recommended to the Minneapolis City Council. It is a flawed regulatory